then the communication will be better.
Say it again.
If you see them, then the communication will be better. I mean, because they are asking questions and something like that. Last time it happened that we ended up and then they were talking. I wanted to ask something.
I don't follow what you're saying. Is it important? What's he saying?
Basically, expectation is that we can have a Zoom call, but today we are not set up for the Zoom meeting.
Okay. So we're going to begin non-Zoom with Chaitanya Bhagavat, Madhya Kanda, Chapter 1, which means before coming here, Lord Chaitanya just received initiation from Ishwara Puri. That is the juncture between Adi and Madhya. And now he's beginning, his scholastic pastimes have concluded. And now up to his marriage, that's where the next break comes. Excuse me, taking sannyas comes. That's where the next break comes. So his pastimes, the Sankirtan pastimes in Navadvip. Now, for those of you who are in the listening audience that may not know, Vrindavan Das Thakur is the author. Vrindavan Das Thakur was the chronologically first of the biographers of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's life, because he lived most of his life up to the point where he wrote this Chaitanya Bhagavat in Navadvip. He is very familiar with Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's pastimes in Navadvip, the first Adi Kanda and Madhya Kanda. Now, all of what he wrote is from what he heard, because he never, when he was 3 years old, according to the chronology that's commonly accepted for his life, when he was 3 years old, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu accepted sannyas and didn't return to Navadvip. So everything that he wrote is what he heard from those that did directly experience Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's pastimes in Navadvip. However, he has details and details and details that he, from his birth, grew up with, because his associates were all pure devotees directly involved with Lord Chaitanya's pastimes. His mother was named Narayani, and Narayani, from the time she was 4 years old, was a celebrated recipient of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's mercy. Without all the details because of time. And when she was quite young, she was married. While she was still pregnant, something like what happened with Maharaj Parikshit, her husband died. Then he was born. And after he was born, she shifted again to the house of Srivas Pandit, Srivas Thakur, because she was the daughter, Narayani was one of the daughters of his brothers. So she's known as the niece. I've not come across which of the brothers, but one of the brothers. So that's where she grew up, in the house of Srivas Thakur. And that's where Vrindavan Das grew up. Later, she shifted to Mamgachi, and the house of Vrindavan Das Thakur is found there today. Mamgachi is a really nice place, along the bank of the Ganges. very secluded, very dreamlike. It's just ideal, like a jungle, but very, very simple and very elevated, where many other Vaishnavas also resided. And that's where he grew up, hearing of Lord Chaitanya. He eventually received Diksha from Lord Nityananda, and he was an ecstatic devotee. And his writing is not scholarly like Krishnadas Kaviraj's writing, is very elevated in scholarship. In many ways, how he wrote and the scriptures that he used to support what he wrote, the explanations of things. His language is just flowing ecstasy. He's a spontaneous bhakta, and it seems from my reading that he was writing for the devotee audience, and he really didn't attempt to address the non-devotee audience, or skeptics, doubters. Someone might doubt this and that. He just, from his heart, poured out glorification, and so it reads like that. And when you hear it, that's what happens to your heart. Faithful devotees just feel they're floating in a spontaneous devotee's sound vibration. Different style. Wonderful style. Here's the invocation verses for Madhya Kanda. The title of the chapter, The Beginning of the Lord's Manifestation and His Instructions on Krishna Sankirtan. I offer my respectful obeisances unto Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu and Sri Nityananda Prabhu, whose arms extend down to their knees, who have complexions like molten gold, and who inaugurated the congregational chanting of the holy names of the Lord. Their eyes resemble the petals of a lotus flower. They are maintainers of all living entities, the best of the brahmanas, the protectors of religious principles for this age, the benefactors of the universe, and the most merciful of all incarnations. O my Lord, you are eternally existing in the past, present, and future, yet you are the son of Sri Jagannath Mishra. I offer my repeated obeisances unto you, along with your associates, your devotee servants, your sons, parentheses, your Goswami disciples, or the processes of devotional service, such as the congregational chanting of the holy name, and your consorts, who, according to regulative principles, refer to Vishnu Priya, who is Bhu Shakti, Lakshmi Priya, who is Shri Shakti, and Navadvip, which is Neela, Leela, or Durga, or who, according to devotional principles, refer to the two Gadadhars. There's Gadadhar Pandit and Gadadhar Das. Narahari, Ramananda, and Jagadananda, and others. Text 3. All glories to Vishvambar, the king of the Brahmanas. All glories to the society of devotees who are dear to Vishvambar. All glories to the most sober Gaurachandra, who is the bridge to religion. All glories to his most attractive form, which is the embodiment of the congregational chanting of the holy names. All glories to the Lord, who is the friend, wealth, and life of Nityananda. All glories to the abode of Gadadhar and Adwaita's love. All glories to the Lord, who is most dear to Jagadananda. All glories to the heart and soul of Rakreshwara and Kashishwara. All glories to the Lord of the devotees, headed by Srivas. O Lord, please bestow your merciful glance on the living entities. The topics of Madhya Khanda are just like drops of nectar. Atheism will be vanquished from the heart of anyone who hears these narrations. Oh, dear brothers, please hear attentively the topics of Madhya Khanda, wherein the inauguration of the Sankirtan pastimes is described. As soon as Sri Gaura Sundara returned from Gaya, the entire city of Nadi was filled with the news. All the Lord's friends and relatives came running to see him. Some came early, some came in between, and some came later. The Lord spoke befittingly with everyone, and they all became jubilant on seeing Vishvambar. They all greeted the Lord and accompanied him home, where Vishvambar narrated topics of his pilgrimage. The Lord said, "By the blessings of all of you, I visited the abode of Gaya without any difficulty." The Lord spoke with such great humility that everyone became fully satisfied. Some persons placed their hands on the Lord's head and said, "Live a long life." Others touched his various limbs while chanting mantras. Some placed their hands on the Lord's chest and blessed him with the words, "May Govinda bestow soothing, blissful mercy on you." The most fortunate, Mother Sachi, was filled with joy and forgot herself while seeing her son. The family of Lakshmi's father became most happy, and Lakshmi's distress was vanquished as she looked at the face of her husband. All the Vaishnavas became pleased. Some of them immediately went to see the Lord. After the Lord humbly spoke with everyone, he bid them goodbye, and they all returned to their homes. The Lord then took a few devotees to a solitary place to discuss some confidential topics. The Lord said, "Oh, friends, please hear about the wonders of Krishna that I have seen. As soon as I entered the abode of Gaya, I heard the most auspicious sounds. Thousands and thousands of brahmanas were reciting prayers from the Vedas. They said, 'Come and see the holy spot where Lord Vishnu washed his lotus feet.' When Krishna previously visited Gaya, he washed his feet at that place. The Ganges became glorious as a result of being touched by the lotus feet of the Lord, and Lord Shiva realized the glories of that water by holding it on his head. By the influence of water, the water that washed the Lord's lotus feet, that place has become famous by the name Padodaka Tirtha. As soon as the Lord repeated the name Padma Tirtha, which is different than the previous verse, tears began to incessantly flow from his eyes. Eventually the Lord lost all composure and began to cry profusely as he called out the name of Krishna. The flower garden became inundated with tears of love, and the Lord sighed deeply while chanting the name of Krishna. The Lord's entire body was decorated with hairs standing on end, and he was unable to remain still as his body began to intensely shiver. Shriman Pandit is one of his brothers, Srivas Pandit's brothers, and the other devotees all watched as the Lord cried out of intense love for Krishna. Tears of love flowed from the Lord's eyes in all directions, as if the Ganges had appeared there. Everyone there was struck with wonder and thought, "We have never seen before him. We have never before seen him like this. He must have received the mercy of Lord Krishna, or perhaps he has seen something wonderful on the way." After a short while, the Lord regained his external consciousness and began to speak to everyone present there. The Lord said, "Oh friends, please return home today. I will tell you where to come so that we may meet tomorrow. I wish to tell you about my miseries in a solitary place. You and Shadashiva should come early to Shuklambar Brahmachari's house." After speaking to everyone, Vishvambar bid them goodbye and then performed his duties. Shuklambar Brahmachari in Krishna Leela is who? Sudama Brahman. He had activities like Sudama Brahman's begging and having rice and things like that the Lord snatched from him, although it was inferior rice. Same pastime. Ecstatic love for Krishna was constantly visible on the body of the Lord, and he became most renounced in his dealings. Could you take a look at I didn't mark where I'm supposed to end. Which verse, what's the verse number I'm supposed to end? Which is it?
42.
142. Okay, thanks. This is verse 43. Mother Shachi could not understand the conduct of her son, yet she was overjoyed to see him. As the Lord wept, he cried out the name of Krishna. His mother saw that the courtyard had become flooded with tears. The Lord cried out, "Where is Krishna? Where is Krishna?" While calling out in this way, his love incessantly increased. His mother could not understand anything, and therefore she sought the protection of Govinda with folded hands. And the Supreme Lord began to manifest himself. Innumerable universes rejoiced. Devotees immediately came when they heard about the auspicious beginning of the Lord's distribution of love. All the Vaishnavas who came to see the Lord were warmly greeted by him. "Meet tomorrow at Shuklambar's house, where I will submit my sorrows to you in seclusion." Shriman Pandit was filled with joy. He was delighted to see the Lord's wonderful manifestation of love. After performing his duties early the next morning, he took a basket and happily went to collect flowers. In the house of Srivas, there was a kunda flower tree that appeared like the incarnation of a kalpavriksha. The Vaishnavas picked from that tree as many flowers as they liked, but the supply of flowers always remained inexhaustible and undiminished. Observing how people in villages pick flowers from flowering trees, the visual image is very nice. But after some time, the trees don't have any more flowers. But this is one that never diminished. After rising in the morning, all the devotees would regularly meet there to gather flowers. Gadadhar, Gopinath, Ramai, Srivas, all enjoyed transcendental mellows while discussing topics of Krishna as they picked flowers. At that moment, Shriman Pandit arrived there with a smile on his face. "It seems you are very happy today," Shriman Pandit replied. "There is, of course, a good reason." The devotee said, "Please explain." Shriman Pandit then said, "Please hear the reason. A most wonderful and most impossible incident has occurred. Nimai Pandit has become the greatest Vaishnav. Hearing that he has happily returned from Gaya, I went to greet him yesterday afternoon. Everything he said revealed his utmost aversion to the world. He did not display any arrogance for even a moment. In a secluded place, he began to speak about Krishna and the wonders that he had witnessed at various places. As soon as he mentioned the name Padmatirtha, the area around him became filled with his tears. His entire body began to tremble, and all the hairs of his body stood on end, calling out, "Oh, Krishna!" He fell to the ground. When he fell unconscious, there was no sign of life in his body. After a while, he regained his external consciousness with a startled motion. Then finally he began to shed tears as he called out the name of Krishna. It appeared as if Ganga herself was flowing from his eyes. By the devotion that I have seen in him, I no longer consider him an ordinary human being. On regaining external consciousness, he said only, "Let us meet at Shuklambar's house early tomorrow morning. I wish to reveal my distress to you, Sadashiva and Murari Pandit. There is every reason to believe the most auspicious news that I have given you." On hearing this news from Sriman Pandit, the devotees triumphantly chanted the name of Hari. The magnanimous Srivas was the first to speak. "May Krishna increase our family. May our family increase." As all the devotees happily discussed topics of Krishna, a most auspicious and enchanting sound vibration arose. All the devotees repeatedly exclaimed, "May it be so. Let everyone worship the lotus feet of Krishna Chandra." In this way, after picking flowers, all the devotees returned to their homes to perform their daily worship. Sriman Pandit went to the house of Shuklambar Brahmachari on the bank of the Ganges. After Gadadhar Pandit heard the news, he quickly went to the house of Shuklambar, thinking, "Let me hear what topics of Krishna he will relate." Gadadhar hid inside Shuklambar's house. Now, this is Gadadhar Pandit, and Gadadhar Pandit, of course, we know that's Radharani, but in their student period, Gadadhar was simultaneously naturally attracted to Nimai and his association, but stayed away because he was always arguing and wrangling and disputing and, challenging, and he had no interest in that. So he would stay away, but he wanted to be with. So he goes to Shuklambar's house and he's hiding. Like, he wants to be close, but doesn't want any of that other stuff. Soon, devoted companions of the Lord, like Sadashiva, Murari, Sriman, and Shuklambar, all gathered there. At that time, Vishwambar, the king of the twice-born, arrived there to meet the assembled Vaishnavas. They all greeted him in great happiness, but the Lord did not manifest any external vision. As soon as the Lord saw the devotees, he began to recite verses glorifying the characteristics of devotional service. "I attained my Lord, but oh, where has he gone?" Saying this, the Lord fell to the ground while holding a pillar. The pillar of the house broke under the pressure of the Lord, and he fell to the ground. His hair scattered, and he lamented, "Where is Krishna?" As soon as the Lord fell to the ground, exclaiming, "O Krishna," all the devotees tottered and also fell to the ground. Gadadhar Pandit fell unconscious within the room. No one knew who fell on whom. All the devotees lost consciousness due to ecstatic love of Krishna. And the goddess Janavi smiled in amazement. After some time, Vishwambar regained his external consciousness and he began to cry loudly and piteously while calling out the name of Krishna. "Oh, Krishna, oh my Lord, where have you gone?" Saying this, the Lord again fell to the ground. The son of Sachi cried out of love for Krishna, and all the devotees surrounding the Lord also cried loudly. Again and again the Lord fell to the ground with great force, but due to ecstatic love, he could not feel anything. The sounds of chanting and crying in ecstatic love combined to fill the house of Shuklambar with love of God. After some time, Vishwambar became pacified and sat down, yet the current of ecstatic love continued to flow. The Lord then inquired, "Who is inside the room?" Shuklambar Brahmachari replied, "Your Gadadhar is inside." Gadadhar bent his head down and cried. Seeing this, Lord Vishwambar became greatly satisfied. The Lord said, "O Gadadhar, you are indeed most fortunate. From your childhood you have firmly fixed your mind on Krishna. I have passed my time in useless endeavors, although I obtained that priceless treasure. By the arrangement of providence, I have lost it." After saying this, Vishwambar again fell to the ground, and his entire body, which is worshipable to everyone, became covered with dust. The Lord repeatedly regained consciousness and repeatedly fell unconscious. Although he hit the ground with his nose and face, he was protected by providence. He could not open his eyes due to excessive tears of love. Other than the name of Krishna, nothing issued from his beautiful mouth. Grasping the necks of those present, Vishwambar wept and asked, "O brothers, tell me quickly, where is Krishna?" Seeing the earnest longing of the Lord, all the devotees cried. They were unable to speak. The Lord said, "Please relieve my distress. Please bring me the son of Maharaj Nanda." After saying this, the Lord sighed deeply and wept repeatedly. His hair was unbound and trailed on the ground. The whole day passed like a moment in this blissful state. Then the Lord took leave of the devotees for a short time. The devotees, headed by Gadadhar, Sadashiva, Sriman Pandit, and Shuklambar, were all filled with amazement. They were all speechless and even lost external consciousness after seeing the transformations of ecstasy displayed by the Lord. They all joyfully went to the community of Vaishnavas and narrated in detail the entire incident. Hearing the news, all the devotees chanted, "Hari, Hari," and began to cry. They were all amazed to hear the wonderful display of love. Some of them said, "Maybe the Supreme Lord has manifested. If Nimai Pandit becomes a good devotee, then we can easily tear off the heads of the atheists." Some of them said, "Know for certain that this is one of Krishna's mysteries. There is no doubt about it." Others said, "By associating with Ishwara Puri, he must have seen some manifestation of Krishna in Gaya." In this way, all the devotees happily discussed various topics among themselves. They all jointly blessed the Lord with the words, "May he be the object of Krishna's mercy." All the devotees began to perform kirtan in ecstasy. Some of them sang, some danced, some cried. In this way, all the devotees happily passed their time as the Lord remained absorbed in his own mood. Returning to partial external consciousness, Vishwambar went to the house of Gangadas Pandit. That's his teacher that he learned everything, grammar, etc. from. The Lord offered his obeisances at the feet of his teacher, who immediately got up with respect and embraced the Lord. His guru said, "Glorious is your life, my dear. You have delivered both your father's and mother's families. Your students know only you as their teacher. They would not open their books for even Lord Brahma. Now that you have returned, you should begin teaching from tomorrow. Today, go home." After offering obeisances to his guru, Vishwambar departed. Surrounded by his students, he appeared like the moon amidst the stars. The Lord then went to the house of Mukunda Sanjay, where he sat down within the Chandi Mandap, accompanied by his relatives. the most pious Mukunda, Sanjay, experienced unlimited happiness. The Lord embraced Purushottama, Sanjay, and drenched his body with tears. All the ladies made auspicious sounds, and the house of Mukunda became the abode of supreme happiness. After glancing mercifully on everyone, Mahaprabhu returned to his house. Upon arriving at his house, the Lord sat at the doorstep of his Vishnu temple, where he affectionately bid farewell to his students. Everyone who came to greet the Lord was unable to understand his characteristics. They found none of the arrogance that the Lord had previously exhibited. Rather, they found him always in a renounced mood. Mother Sachi was unable to understand anything of her son's behavior. She simply worshipped the Ganges and Lord Vishnu for her son's welfare. She prayed, "O Krishna Chandra, you took away my husband, and you took away my son. Now I have only this one son left. O Krishna, I have no one to protect me. Please give me the benediction that Vishwambar may peacefully remain at home." Mother Sachi purposely brought Vishnupriya and had her sit in front of her son. Although the Lord gazed in her direction, he did not actually see her. The Lord constantly recited verses and cried as he continually implored, "Where is Krishna? Where is Krishna?" Sometimes he roared loudly in such a way that Vishnupriya ran away in fear, and Sachi became frightened. Due to feelings of separation from Krishna, the Lord could not sleep at night. He would feel so uncomfortable that sometimes he would get up from bed, sometimes he would lie down, and sometimes he would just sit there. As soon as the Lord saw a materialistic person, he would conceal his internal mood. Every morning, he would go take bath in the Ganges. As soon as the Lord returned from taking a bath in the Ganges, his students would assemble there. And that's text 142. And that's as far as we're supposed to go. Different, huh? Quite different. The opportunity to hear the pastimes of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. Now, he's just a teenager. Where Lord Chaitanya and Lord Nityananda meet. So I presented some chronology questions to Varsana Swami because he's so vastly, he's immersed in Gaura Leela. And his reply, chronology-wise, was it's hard to say for sure because different reference sources have different timings of things. But it seems that his initiation with Ishwara Puri, which just took place, was when he was around 14. Which means, his marriage was slightly before that. And his meeting with Lord Nityananda was when he was around 20, 18 to 20. Because he then accepted sannyas when he was 24. So that just gives some sense of chronology, because there's a lot that happens between, there's a whole kanda, a whole section from the time he receives initiation until the time he takes sannyas. 10 years, approximately. And so just a little review from the previous kanda. It's important. There's a sequence. It's Leela. He's the personality of Godhead, but he is exhibiting, going from being a worldly, scholarly, feisty, challenging, debate-oriented youngster to step by step coming to the stage of receiving his initiation. And those stages, it's nice to meditate on them. Just as a student with his many other students surrounding him underneath a tree by the bank of the Ganges and passing by with Gadadhar Pandit, asking, who is that? That's Nimai. Oh, Nimai. He heard of Nimai before he saw him. And approaching Nimai immediately, Nimai did the respectful thing. He invited him, please come have lunch at our home. Madhya Ch immediately prepared. So, respectful dealings with the sadhu, and offering prasad to the sadhu, and then hearing from the sadhu, and then further some rendering of some service to the sadhu, because it's important to several things are important. Nobody defeated Nimai, but Nimai happily accepted defeat from Ishwar Puri, because the service that was requested of Nimai, oh, you're very qualified in grammar, could you please hear my book about Krishna, and if you see anything that needs to be corrected, you like be a proofreader, kind of proofreader editor. And Nimai said, you're an exalted personality, you don't need any correction. No. I'm asking this as a service, please do this service. There may be some grammatical, technical mistake. So for 3 months, Nimai heard, and towards the end, there's details. It's not mentioned in Chaitanya Bhagavat, but the scholarship of Vrindavan of Krishnadas Kaviraj shines through, and he gives the specifics of grammar rules, that instead of this word it should be that word for this reason, etc., etc. I'm not a Sanskrit scholar, so I don't know the rules. And Ishwar Puri's reply was, let me consider. And the next day, Ishwar Puri said, what I wrote was right because this and this and this. Now, Nimai Pandit was notorious for being a debater. He would make a statement and ask people to refute it. They couldn't refute it. Then he would refute it. Then he would establish another thesis, ask them to refute it. They couldn't refute it. He would refute it and go back to the initial thesis and ask them to refute it. They couldn't refute it. Then he would refute it and go to another one. It was like endlessly, it's tarka apratishta. By logic, it's always inconclusive. He was establishing his brilliance and the impermanence and insufficiency of logic, and his superlative abilities in this way. But he submitted to Ishwar Puri happily. It's part of the pastime. It's part of his, transitioning from a scholar to a devotee. And then from that association, he started from time to time speaking about devotional service, instead of just speaking about rules and logic and so forth. The devotional influence entered. And then en route to Gaya, he had considered. Like a refrain, it comes again, and it comes again, and it comes again in the whole of the Adikanda. You know, the Vaishnavas, that apparently weren't so many, but were very elevated, and the abundance of non-Vaishnavas, and how the non-Vaishnavas would vilify and harass and so forth the devotees. It was very lamentable, and they would lament over the circumstance. So specifically, Vrindavan Das writes that he decided, I want to manifest that which will be the cure of this problem. So on the pretext of going to perform the Shraddha for his father, several events. His getting a fever, like Krishna had a headache and Mahaprabhu had a fever, or Nimai had a fever. And they tried this and that and the other medicine, cure, nothing happened. Fever wouldn't break. He gave the prescription. The water from the Brahmana's feet. And as soon as he drank, so taking that humble position before the Brahmana Vaishnavas. And then we heard, just here, the prayers glorifying Vishnu, seeing the feet of Vishnu. Then, when in Gaya, it just so happened that Ishwara Puri was in Gaya, so when he was finished with all the rituals of the different temples that took the whole day, he was cooking. Ishwara Puri came, he offered everything to Ishwara Puri. He said, no, this is for you. No, you please, yeah, I'll cook again. So in this way, rendering service, and then hearing from him further. And then Lord Chaitanya requested, receive mantra. And upon receiving the mantra, it was night and day difference. He went again in madness of ecstasy of love for Krishna, just by that contact with Krishna's name in the form of the mantra. No, we're not told what that mantra is, but we can assume it's one of the mantras that we also receive. And Gopal mantra is a very favorite mantra in Vaishnava Sampradayas. So whatever the mantra was, Krishna's being indicated in that mantra, and he became totally transformed. And the ecstasy, now that he's back in Navadvip, who can imagine what those? Because these are individuals that grew up with him and saw him not as an incarnation of the personality of Godhead, but whatever their age and their particular relationship, and particularly with Gadadhar, is very important. From childhood, just as it said, Lord Chaitanya said to Gadadhar, from childhood, he was renounced and incredibly devoted to Krishna. And naturally attracted to Lord Chaitanya, but averse to his association while he was behaving this way, like just a wrangling student. Very profound. And we can take it because the biography of that Vrindavan Das has written is widely accepted as authoritative, meaning these pastimes weren't exaggerations, they were what Lord Chaitanya did with the persons that are known, that are mentioned. is an authoritative source of Lord Chaitanya's early life. And most wonderful. Most, what to speak of what happens later when he goes to Puri. But even these pastimes, most wonderful. And how they must have felt. Like, because there were statements before in Adikanda, if he somehow becomes a Vaishnav, the world is saved, because he was so powerful, so charming, and no one could check him. If he becomes a Vaishnav, we're saved, the world is saved. And he became a Vaishnav. Of course, it's pastime. He's not just a Vaishnav, he is the Supreme Lord. Let's say a couple other things, and we'll stop for discussion. The language of Vrindavan Das is when saying he in the first chapter of Adikanda, it gives a sequence of the events of the whole kanda. And it says he gave his mercy to Ishwara Puri. And that's not normally the kind of language you use when one takes shelter of a Diksha Guru and receives mantra from the Diksha Guru. But he gave his mercy to Ishwara Puri in the sense that Ishwara Puri was accepted in that exalted position of being the Diksha Guru of Lord Chaitanya. He is bringing a spotlight or giving special appreciation to Ishwara Puri. Now, Ishwara Puri, in his own right, was he was an Uttama Adhikari. He was in the topmost stage of devotion, having received everything that he had received from Madhavendra Puri, who was in the topmost stage of devotion. But he received everything that Ishwara Puri had to give. Ishwara Puri received it from Madhavendra Puri. And Ishwara Puri, in turn, one can trace the ecstatic mood comes from Ishwara Puri. That's in the Leela sense. But in the higher sense of things, because Ishwara Puri is not just like a nice devotee, he must have had, in some cases it indicates he understood what role he was playing. The Diksha Guru of the Supreme Lord. But it was so he played his part. And then we hear in Chaitanya Charitamrita, later, it's not mentioned in Chaitanya Bhagavat, but later, Lord Chaitanya has some discussion with Ishwara Puri, saying, this was narrated when Chaitanya Mahaprabhu went to Varanasi and had discussion with Prakashananda Saraswati, that I went to my spiritual master and said, I've become a madman. When I chant these things, those things, the other things, what am I doing wrong? And my spiritual master said, this is very nice. These are symptoms that you're in the topmost stage of devotion, the perfectional stage of chanting. And Ishwara Puri recited a verse from the Srimad Bhagavatam, in which Karabhajana Muni, if I remember correctly, described this stage of chanting of the holy name. And it's an indication, the bodily transformations, etc. It's an indication of upper stages of bhava or prema, preliminary bhava, and the more mature stage of bhava leading into prema. He was acknowledging. This is very good. Please continue. Now, he exhibited, we hear, in this section we just read, symptoms before his close associates. And when there were others around that were not Vaishnavas, he checked himself. He kept those sentiments internal. And his, profound attraction for Krishna. This is in Navadvip, in these early stages. Later, it was unbridled. In the verse that was spoken by Ishwar Puri from the 11th canto Bhagavatam, the word unmada, vat, like a madman, vat, like a madman, or like somebody intoxicated. Somebody is drunk. They don't know what they're doing. They're not feeling anything, like it's described here. Not the same, but like that. And not caring for outsiders, it specifically says. That the ecstasy of the prema stage is, can be checked, but sometimes can't be even restrained as much as one can, but sometimes it just spills out anyways. So that's the stage the Lord Chaitanya is exhibiting, and he's just getting started. So let's see if there's some discussion. Now, my experience in going through Adhikanda, because these are pastimes, there's generally not as much discussion as there is when there's philosophy. Well, let's see if there's some comments or questions here. We have a microphone or no?
Yeah.
You do? Okay. Anyone? Comments or questions? Or reflections, something you... Something behind you?
Hare Krishna Maharaj. Maharaj, it is said like everybody was thinking if Nimai becomes a Vaishnava, Nimai becomes a Vaishnava.
Say it again slower. Everyone?
Everyone said that if Nimai becomes a Vaishnava.
Yeah.
So was there anything else going on other than Vaishnavism at that time, and they were thinking...
Was anything else going on where? In his life or in Navadvip?
In Navadvip, like...
Well, there were Vaishnavas and there were non-Vaishnavas. And there was loud kirtan and people complaining about the loud kirtan. The usual stuff. And then the materialists doing what materialists do. They're learned, largely, many learned persons. Of course, all Varnas were there, but many learned persons. But the learnedness was towards material progress and so forth. And they disliked kirtan. And they've had their reasons, Brahminical reasons, and other material reasons. This isn't the scripture. What are they doing? That's what was going on. Let's see if we can get, for the people online, this has got a long cable. It's good.
Hare Krishna Maharaj. Maharaj, you were mentioning about the incident where
Mahaprabhu heard about Padmapada Tirtha, and then like water was flowing, tears were flowing from his eyes. So can you explain what that significance of the Tirtha?
Yeah, it's probably to some degree there in the commentary, but and I don't have to cover all of this. It was without commentary, but it's the principle is thinking of Vishnu. You know, we did this, we did that, and it was then the place is the place of the feet of Vishnu. So thinking of the feet of Vishnu, he lost it. Because the feet of Vishnu for an ecstatic Vaishnav brings all kinds of thoughts of service and love and emotion in relation to the service. For us, it's maybe a festival or some opportunity to do some puja or something. And for him, it's, he hit his ecstasy button and he just went. It's something like in Srimad Bhagavatam Canto 3, when Vidura sees Uddhava and starts asking Uddhava about Krishna and Balaram and the Yadu dynasty associates and everything, Uddhava went into a trance. And the way that is described, he was with Krishna, and he struggled to bring himself to external consciousness to be responsive to this elder, who you look up to elders if you're a cultured person, and he wanted to be responsive. So like that, just the event of being there in the place of Vishnu, the abode of Vishnu, where the lotus feet of Vishnu are seen and worshipped and sung about and chanted in very elevated manner, he just got lost in meditation, contemplation, or who can say what? Ecstasy. Just hearing the name.
Thank you, Maharaj.
Something that, because I don't see a lot of hands up, I'll just speak something. For this Chaitanya Charitamrita GBC strategic planning team, interviewing different speakers, marathon that's going on. One that I just watched from beginning to end was Vaisheshika Prabhu interviewing Rameswar Prabhu and Drishti. Drishti? Not Drishti. What's the artist's name? Driti. And their personalities are very different, but it's very, I've heard this whole narration before, this like maybe 20 years ago in New Vrindavan with Devamrita Maharaj, who was there, who was part of the team that was part of that marathon. Driti was 14, 15, something like that when she was from New York and invited by Radharani to go and to participate. And there's a picture of her. She looks like a teenage girl. She was a teenage girl. But the description of the flow of transcendental mercy that was flowing through those devotees, where they were just in transcendence, just by the desire of Prabhupada to produce these 17 volumes in 2 months, with round-the-clock, etc., etc. So they were filled with spiritual energy. So having just heard that, and Ramaswamy is a very good narrator, and you can feel that he feels what he's saying. That's the kind of situation. Chaitanya Mahaprabhu felt those feelings, and just mentioned that the place, and he was feeling those feelings again. And it was only a short while before this Chaitanya Charitamrita book marathon. It's in ISKCON it's called the book marathon. It lasted for 2 months, but that was 1970s, early 1970s. That's a lot of years ago. This is Chaitanya Mahaprabhu had just had this experience a short while ago. So just hearing the name, now it's Lord Vishnu, it's not Krishna, but somehow, I don't know this. I want to go look at the commentary and see, did Krishna go to Gaya? It says specifically Krishna, not Vishnu. But in any case, Vishnu, Krishna, Lord Chaitanya at this stage is not splitting hairs. He is in ecstasy of love of God. So that's the name just burst forth all the flow of transcendental happiness and emotion and sense of connection. My sense is, as we go along, we'll also, because we weren't Vrindavan Das, who grew up from, literally from childhood, from, even within the womb of his mother, being a recipient of the mercy of Lord Chaitanya. What was he experiencing in writing and narrating these things? But, he didn't have Lord Chaitanya's association. But similarly, we're not having Lord Chaitanya's association except through sound. And most likely, we'll be feeling something that is stirring some transcendental feelings. And especially because these are sung. Like Ramayana was sung, and Bhagavad Gita was sung, and the Bhagavatam was sung. So persons learned the scripture that way, by singing. And by singing and singing and singing, just like worldly people, they sing a song and then they feel something about that song they sing. Even, the rap music people, I can't figure it out. But they know all the words, and their car is shaking when they're going by, and they're into it. So what to speak of this, the effect of hearing the glories of Lord Chaitanya's ecstasies and everything else that he did. It just brings you connected to him, and you feel those feelings that he's feeling just through that sound and the transparent medium of the person speaking it, or writing it, or singing it, or narrating it, or hearing it. It has that effect. Others? Yeah.
Raj, one clarification I want to seek. So in Chaitanya Leela, the expressions and the behavior and the trance expressions that Chaitanya Mahaprabhu or Vishwambar expressed is much different than Krishna Leela or Rama Leela. So
Yes.
how do we take that? Sometimes it obviously, at least for persons like me or those who don't have much exposure on the Chaitanya Leela, seems to be much contradictory or something looks different than those who has more exposure to Krishna Leela and Ram Leela.
It's not contradictory. It's just different.
Yeah, it's not contradictory.
Okay, let's just clarify that our language here. Lord Ramachandra had a mission, or there's a purpose in his appearance in this world, besides killing Ravan, the ideal king, the upholder of Dharma, and so on. Now, Krishna did some similar things, but displaying pastimes of loving exchange with his devotees and attracting the worldly people again to the spiritual realm. So that you can say those three things. Killing the demons, reciprocating loving dealings with devotees in a very wonderful way. Each one according to their regard for him, perfectly, expertly, each one. And then those of us that are, caught in the Mayic realm, to become attracted to the all-attractive. So purpose 1, purpose 2, purpose 3. The love of Radharani for Krishna. The mood of love of a most exalted devotee for Krishna. What does it look like? It's not Radharani in her dealings with Krishna in Krishna Leela. It's a devotee of Krishna in this world having that kind of attraction of love. It's a different Leela, different mission, different purpose. So you don't look at it through this lens or that lens. You get another lens. He's got a mission. Freely giving love of God to everyone. Didn't require it, didn't, surrender to me and I'll deliver you. So it's different. It takes a while getting used to. Say somebody that grew up hearing Ramayana, hearing Krishna Leela, or the other way around, hearing Krishna Leela, that's from my starting, knowing about, not so much about Ram. And it takes a while to get okay, what's going on here with Ram? But as one becomes absorbed in it, it's different and it's very attractive. It elevates in a different way, and this elevates in a different way. So let go of your stereotypes and, just hear from authoritative sources, such as Vrindavan Das here. We have something online. Yeah, can we have the microphone?
There's a question from Archana Vaidya. Hare Krishna Maharaj, how do we understand Mother Sachi's emotions regarding praying Krishna to keep Nimai peaceful at home? Is it similar to Mother Yashoda, who also didn't know about Krishna as being the Supreme Lord? Did she have feelings of suffering, or they were transcendental feelings?
Well, they are similar and they are transcendental. And, she's she's a Shakti Tattva from our perspective. She's an eternal associate and of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. Mother Sachi is in the spiritual world. She's of the spiritual world. And she has motherly affection. She Vatsalya Bhav. Now, she's also by Leela, she's without her son, she's without her husband, she has only this one son. So she's wanting, not in a mundane way, the sounding is, oh, let him stay. But it's a transcendental emotion. One has to understand it that way. We heard earlier, for example, she's like Mother Earth. Nimai would sometimes go into a tirade, wanting something, and his mother didn't bring it fast enough. So he got a stick and started breaking everything in the house, and breaking the door, and breaking the house, and smashing a tree outside, and pounding the ground, and falling asleep. And everything's wrecked. He was exhibiting what is part of what's inside is Rudra's anger over something. Paraphernalia for puja, and it didn't come fast enough. So children may go and have a little tantrum, but he was so. She didn't understand what it was, but she didn't scold him at all. She didn't say anything other than, when he finished his puja, what's going to replace all this? And you're only hurting yourself, because all these things that are now destroyed, they're needed for you. And then he produced some gold and said, you can go and buy everything again. Where do you get this gold? And then it would happen again and again. It's like the grain of rice means there's many other rice grains, and from time to time he would do things like that. So, how did she as a mother process all of this? She was just totally tolerant, totally like Mother Earth. People abuse Earth, and Earth is very tolerant. Sachi was like, so she didn't see him as the personality of Godhead. She saw him as, anyway, there's so many transcendental emotions that she had. After losing her son, then losing her husband, all she had was Sachi. And he said, I'll be with you. And just seeing him and being with him, she forgot, her sadness of losing her dear husband, pure devotee husband. The sadness went away. The grief dissipated. So it's transcendental. And so her expression here is a transcendental expression. Looks like the material kind, but it's not. Next.
Yeah. Amritananda Prabhu, you can speak, actually.
We have somebody speaking live.
Hare Krishna Maharaj. Hare Krishna. Maharaj, can you hear me?
I can hear you, kind of. Put the mic near the phone. Go ahead, speak.
You can have both of them on at the same time.
I can't hear you. Now, go ahead, speak.
Yeah, you're audible.
Thank you. Please accept my humble obeisance, Maharaj.
Thank you for your class. My question is regarding Chaitanya Mahaprabhu comes in the mood of Srimati Radharani, and Radharani is the most compassionate. In fact, when we say a Mahamantra, it is Hey Radharani, please engage me in Krishna's service, because she's so compassionate and kind. Now, in the Chaitanya Leela, we find that Nityananda Prabhu is more merciful, the Jagai Madhai pastime, than Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, who is in the mood of Radharani. So I'm trying to reconcile this by also understanding that Krishna always wants to give the credit or the glory to his devotee. Is there any other significance, Maharaj, of how Nityananda Prabhu is more compassionate than Mahaprabhu, who is the mood of Radharani, who is so compassionate?
You're a transcendentalist, and you're looking for the topics of Lord Chaitanya to be churned a little further. I've often contemplated the same question, expressed a little differently, but my realization is very tiny, but my realization is this. The Lord likes to give recognition to his devotee. So the pinnacle of compassion is Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, because he's in the mood of Radharani, as you've said several times. Namo Mahavadanyaya. And Lord Chaitanya likes to give the credit to Lord Nityananda. Just like Krishna showed Arjuna that all the soldiers in the battlefield, they're all destroyed, but I want you to be the instrument. So Nityananda similarly was the instrument. And the Leela of Nityananda was that he was like an Avaduta, or was an Avaduta, that is to say, he made no consideration of social formalities in many, many different ways. And in that ecstatic mood, being the instrument of fulfilling Lord Chaitanya's desire, because he knew Lord Chaitanya's desire even before it was spoken. He waited to come to Navadvip until Chaitanya Mahaprabhu was exhibiting his Sankirtan pastimes. And thereafter, constant companion, until Lord Chaitanya then sent him to go to Navadvip to be his instrument. So, the most munificent acting through his instrument. And the instrument gets greater acknowledgement and, similar ecstatic mood by the mercy of Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. So, like that, the Lord likes to give honor and credit to his devotee. Lord Nityananda is the best of the devotees, so he likes to fulfill Lord Chaitanya's desire, and he does so in an ecstatic mood. And in fact, that pastime of Jagai and Madhai being liberated, after that, there's some sections where they're disagreeing with one another who delivered Jagai and Madhai. Nityananda is thinking, you delivered them. And Lord Chaitanya is thinking, you delivered them. So they don't agree who delivered them. They're giving the credit to one another. But he's the instrument of. That's my shallow. I'm sure there's other acharyas who have written extensively, and I'm not familiar because I've searched, because it's a nice point to ponder. But that's the essence of my understanding.
Thank you,
Thank you,
Maharaj.
Maharaj.
If
If
I
I
may
may
have
have
another
another
question
question
come
come
forward,
forward,
is that
is that
okay?
okay?
Yeah.
Thank you,
Thank you,
Maharaj.
Maharaj.
Maharaj, I
Maharaj, I
liked what
like
you
what you
said
said
earlier in
earlier
the
in the
class that
class that
logic is
logic is
impermanent
impermanent
and
and
insufficient
insufficient
in
in
establishing or
establishing
even
or even
understanding
understanding
Chaitanya
Chaitanya
Mahaprabhu, all
Mahaprabhu,
the
all the
spiritual
spiritual
truths
truths
that
that
love.
love.
So,
So,
how
how
does
does
one,
one,
how does
how
one
does one
understand or
understand or
differentiate
differentiate
between
between
logic
logic
and
and
wanting to
wanting
know
to know
more
more
about
about
Chaitanya
Chaitanya
Mahaprabhu,
Mahaprabhu,
his
his
leelas, and
leelas,
so
and
on and
so on
so
and so
forth?
forth?
Because
Because
at
at
some
some
point in
point in
time, we
time we
have to
have to
rely on
rely
our
on our
reasoning
reasoning
and
and
logic.
Well, you don't rely on it, but you use it.
Use it.
We say, our scriptures say there are three primary means of knowing things, and two of them are fallible, and one of them, Apaurushaya Shabda Pramana, is infallible. It doesn't mean we throw in the trash bin our sense perception and reason. I mean, listen carefully to our scriptures or hear Prabhupada lecture. He would appear to reason again and again and again. We don't trash it, we use it. We use it in alignment with Apaurushaya Shabda Praman. So, we're engaging. It's say the same thing differently. Prabhupada again and again would say, try to understand, try to understand, try to understand. So what's the faculty that we're using when we're trying to understand? To a degree, we have reason and logic capacity. We use reason and logic capacity, knowing that it's fallible, but we don't trash it. It's subordinate to. It reaches its proper utility when it's in alignment with Apaurushaya Shabda Praman. So our main process is hearing that. And as we're hearing that, we're using our senses. Of course, their senses are becoming purified. We're using our intelligence. According to what Krishna says in Bhagavad Gita, one who studies this sacred conversation is worshiping me with his intelligence. So it becomes spiritualized or, non-material. Reasoning, intelligence, senses become spiritualized. Because all those are sitting places of lust, aren't they? So they need to become spiritualized. So we use them in service. That's our bhakti process. Rishikena Rishikesha Sevanam. For purification. Not relying on them, but we use them.
Mm-hmm. Thank you,
Thank you,
Maharaj.
Anything else online?
Okay, so this is from Snehavali. Hare Krishna Guru Maharaj. Is the name Sada Shiva mentioned in the narration referring to Advaita Acharya? Thank you.
Commonly, yes. Specifically, I don't know. Commonly, Advaita Acharya is referred to as Sadashiva. But the other personalities that are mentioned along with Sadashiva are his peers or classmate kind of student level associates. So I can go and check and see if there's, among his associates, if one of them is also known as Sadashiva. But so I'm not certain. Commonly that's how it's used, but I don't know for certain in this context.
There's a question from Devikananda Prabhu. When we see a devotee going from 1 to 16 rounds, all of a sudden, or talking high philosophy in the early stages of his devotion, we tend to label as Sahaja devotee, but Mahaprabhu goes in one shot from scholar to an ecstatic devotee. Yes, we want to glorify the Lord and He is the Supreme Lord, but how do we also not get trapped in sahajism by thinking that I can fast-track devotee as Mahaprabhu?
Well, I don't know if it's a common. I've had lots of experience with devotees suddenly making big quantum leaps, and I haven't heard it being labeled as sahajism. Maybe overzealous. Sahajya means something else. It's taking cheaply. But if somebody has the capacity to increase in substantial quantities and sustain it over, that's the real test, is sustain it over a period of time. That's the real test. Then fantastic. And generally speaking, it's advisable for someone to go in steps and steps and maintain, and then steps and then maintain and continue to progress in that way. That's the more sustainable method of making progress. So the question seems to be how to recognize that Chaitanya Mahaprabhu went from 0 to 60 in the fraction of a second, but he's the personality of Godhead. And if there's a beginner that's striving to make strong progress, how do we view that person? In the language of Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur, he has a Sanskrit term for it, meaning it's a standard, utsaha mayi, it's a standard step. False enthusiasm, utsaha mayi. Thinking, the example that Vishwanath gives is a young student that joins school and thinks he's mastered everything as soon as he's joined school. So it's false enthusiasm. And it's not uncommon. It's there's a term for it. So how do we regard that person? Well, they're not matured yet, and they're thinking beyond what their capacity is, and it won't be sustained. So what do? We encourage them, do that which you can sustain. Be careful always about labeling. Better to encourage than to put somebody in a box and put a label on the box, and that's where they are. We encourage them to do that which they can sustain. That's it? One more?
From Sasireka Devidasi. Maharaj, I've heard that when Lord does Leela, he forgets himself and he gets involved in Leela so he can enjoy Leela. Is this true? I was thinking, how can Lord forget anything? Or maybe he covers himself from inferior energy temporarily to do his Leela.
The personality of Godhead is omniscient, and it's not time-bound. And part of his omniscience is he specifically, there's a nice detailed description of this when Lord Krishna sees the cowherd boys entering the mouth of the Aghasura demon. And he is reflecting on, just see how wonderful is this Yogamaya potency. Because he, Krishna, has unlimited Shaktis. One of those unlimited Shaktis is Satya Sankalpa Shakti, which means he doesn't have to do anything. He just desires and it happens. And he desired the cowherd boys not enter, and they entered. So he was marveling at his own Yogamaya potency. So, and in this way, it is sometimes described, he became bewildered by the effects of his own Yogamaya potency. But he's omniscient. And in his omniscience, his various potencies are acting sometimes this way and that way. And to us, it appears, and we can even describe it, he forgot himself. But he's omniscient. He never becomes and loses and then becomes again. He's always omniscient. That's a given. It's one of his 6 principal potencies. And the energies of Krishna acting under his indication are sometimes producing emotions for him or Leela for him that are displaying different parts of his potencies. He never loses his omniscience, nor becomes omniscient, or regains his omniscience. He's always omniscient. And there's varieties by his own desire. Okay, it looks like that's it. You have something.
Hare Krishna, Guru Maharaj. Thank you so much. I just wanted to understand if a devotee is not particularly enthusiastic to learn more about the pastimes of Lord Chaitanya or Lord Ramachandra. They have their basics down, like you're not the body, you're the soul, you're part and parcel of Krishna. You have to do this, this, and this to go back there. Tell as many people as you can. Would their not being enthusiastic to learn more about the pastimes of Krishna hinder them in their bhakti process anywhere?
Well, without enthusiasm, one will not progress in anything, material or spiritual. It's natural, we'll say it the other way, it's natural that as one understands something, that one is inquisitive, as this preliminary understanding expands and grows, what does it look like, how to understand it more deeply, and so that inquisitiveness is completely natural, it's part of spiritual dynamic, and one finds out there's no limit to Krishna Tattva. It's not like, okay, I got that down, what's next? There's no limit. And that's part of the adventure. It's part of the using the word, the enthusiasm. We hear from Rupa Goswami, and it's true, that the entrance into the Vrindavan pastimes of Krishna is through the medium of that enthusiasm, or it's even stronger, greediness to be in the company of Krishna, and there's no limit to it. So it's inhibiting if one becomes complacent. Yes. Okay. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, it does. But I have another one. I actually wanted to ask you since a long time, but I've never been able to for some reason. There's some devotees, or there may be, who are very interested in pastimes about Lord Krishna and Lord Chaitanya. And maybe their focus is not too much on the philosophy and just the pastimes. Would they be, or would I, if I was interested in just the pastimes, would I be able to achieve Krishna? Would I be able to go back to Godhead without being interested in the philosophy and just Krishna Tattva?
Well, it's a rhetorical question, because the Krishna Tattva is not separate from Krishna Leela. If one is actually interested in Krishna Leela, one will be interested in Krishna Tattva. If one is interested in Krishna Tattva, one will be interested in Krishna Leela, because it's Krishna. There may be some persons that are more inclined to this expression or that expression of Krishna Bhakti. That's perfectly natural. However, Leela of Krishna without that clear understanding of Krishna Tattva can be misleading. And just being interested in Krishna Tattva without being interested in Krishna Leela, it's incomplete. So again, some persons are more inclined to this feature or that feature of devotional service. Some people like to cook. Some people like to dress the deity. Some people like kirtan. Some people like to something. We have our psychophysical nature and we have likings of aspects of devotional service. And within the Bhagavatam, there's the range of tattva and the range of Leela. But to really relish, as our acharyas have done, to really relish the Leela, the tattva, it's not like putting sand in the sweet rice. It brings the sweetness out even more. What is Krishna doing here? What are the energies of Krishna that are at play? How is he moving from this mood to that mood? So the Krishna Tattva feature, the philosophy feature, is embedded within the pastimes. And it enables one to appreciate the pastimes better by having a clear understanding of Krishna Tattva. So the package is incomplete if it's one without the other.
Thank you.
Anything?
Hare Krishna Maharaj. My obeisances of your lotus feet, Maharaj. Maharaj, I have a question. Like a Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, somebody was discussing with me. I was not able to answer. The question was that Chaitanya Mahaprabhu got married first time, and that the Chaitanya Mahaprabhu wife got died because of snake bite. And second time Chaitanya Mahaprabhu got.
Well, at least, excuse me for interrupting. According to Chaitanya Bhagavat, she died of separation.
Separation. And my second, like a Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, why he was asking, like a Chaitanya Mahaprabhu took sannyas, even that was like a Chaitanya Mahaprabhu mood or the plan. So what the purpose to get married? That was the person was discussing with me and asking if he got married, then why he gave that like a separation and took the sannyas. So I answered because of the higher purpose. As per the scriptures, that is not something we cannot do. But he was asking if that the purpose, could Chaitanya Mahaprabhu not do that same thing, having a grasta life? Why he decided to leave the wife? This is not something like he gave up his duty something. He was asking that way, Maharaj. So how to justify that?
Let me say back what I think is being asked by this friend of yours. Let me say it back. Chaitanya Mahaprabhu accepted sannyas, but he could have remained a grahastha and performed his pastimes of sankirtan and so forth and so on as a grahastha instead of as a sannyasi. So why did he do that? Or, can we cast some aspersions toward Lord Chaitanya? He shouldn't have done that because it left his poor wife, as a young woman without any protection. He left his mother without any protection. So, he could have done it differently. He should have done it differently. Why did he do it the way that he did it? That's the question?
Yeah, that's the question.
Okay. I can think of multiple things. Why did Ramachandra send Sita away, even after she proved her chastity? It's a Leela. She returned back into earth from where she came. Now that's a Leela. So, the separation, Vipralamba Bhav, she, Lakshmi Priya and Vishnu Priya, they're Shri and Bhu. They're eternal associates of the Lord. So why this and why that? It's the Leela of meeting and separation. They're eternal associates. What's the meeting and what's the separation? It's a Leela. From that perspective. From another perspective, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, we were discussing this the other day. Chaitanya Mahaprabhu is showing the love of Radharani. For Krishna in separation from Krishna. Now, here comes another big topic. Parakya and Swakya Rasa, Radha and Krishna. Just without going into it, put that one over there. But what's the relationship between Radha and Krishna? What's the relationship between Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, who is Krishna in the mood of Radha, and Krishna? So it's a separation of the pastime. It's a little bit like his question of, understanding Krishna Leela and Ram Leela, but this is a whole other thing. It's a whole other thing. It's Krishna in the mood of Radha in love for Krishna. So where does the internal potency, Shri and Bhu, fit with that pastime? So it's separating the pastime of the Lord engaging in loving pastime with his eternal consort to yet another purpose of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's appearance, which is exhibiting ecstatic love in a worldly sannyasi. So it has everything to do with the higher purpose. Everything to do with the higher. It's not. Oh, now I get it. It's not like black and white. So clear. Yes. It's a transcendental mood of Krishna experiencing the love that Radha has for Krishna. It's not the same as a householder with his beloved wife, in this case Narayana and Lakshmi, as if engaged in service to Lord Narayan. It's different. And so there's a separation in pastime.
Yeah, thank you so much.
Now he gave to his wife deities which are today worshipped in Navadvip of Gauranga. She worshipped and saw the Lord in that deity. There's layers of depth and transcendental emotion in all of this, so that he could go on with his Leela. Now, I guess a simple way to wrap this up is to say it's kind of logic defying. In any ways. And so we don't want to put boundaries on what Chaitanya Mahaprabhu should and shouldn't do to perform this Leela of showing the love of Radha for Krishna as Krishna himself. It's exhibiting already in the pages that we've read. His wife is in front of him. She's his eternal associate, his Shakti, and he's not even seeing her. Where is Krishna? It's not, a man that's kind of lost attraction for his beautiful wife. And he's just like his kind of absent-minded being in the presence of his loving, beautiful, adorable, affectionate wife. He's in this other, so he just keeps going. It's the Leela.
Thank you so much, Paraja.
It's logic defying. It's not. No, Ramachandra taught us, this is ideal. The word of your father there isn't anything more than that. Anyway, it's so many other virtues that Lord Ram's teachings teach. And it's good to be a virtuous person, to be fastidious and, fixed in virtue like Ram taught. And then, without going through it again, Krishna Leela is different and Gaura Leela is different. He's not bound by our conventions. Where did it all go? Where would his wife have fit into Gambhira? When his moods of ecstasy, where his bodily limbs become elongated, like it would, or look like a pumpkin. It's another Leela besides the Lord and his consort. Okay, I think that's it.
Hare Krishna Guru Maharaj. One small thing. In our congregation, Devakinandan Prabhu is next door actually. It's his appearance day today. He doesn't know. And we all are requesting you to seek for his blessings, your blessings basically.
Devakinandan, happy birthday. But we're not going to sing the song.
We were planning of,
you can take
but he could, due to health reasons, he couldn't come here. So.
Okay, you can bring him a cake or something.
Thank you.
Or something.
So thank you all for joining. So this will be continued for another 2 days of Gaur Katha from His Holiness Rumpad Swami. So tomorrow it will be around 6:30, a change of time. If you can please do attend a half hour early. And on Sunday, it will be again at 7 o'clock. So please do immerse in the Gaur Katha. And even though if it is more philosophical, please do listen in, and there will be a lot more to learn from Lord Chaitanya.
Hare Krishna. Prabhupada ki jai.
Jai. Yes.